Okay, we are going to begin the rent control meeting. Tonight is January 27th. We welcome you to the Easton Rent Control Board meeting. And please note that this meeting is being televised. So I'd like to introduce Kate Federoff, our attorney. And are you Attorney Morrissey?
No, I'm Attorney Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, come on up.
Right here?
Yep. So, do you want to give us a little bit of background, just an overview on this?
Sure.
Where we are right now?
Sure. So it's a long storied history here for the mobile home park in Easton. And in the past few years, there have been requests made from both sides for rent increases, all of which were denied, and one of which resulted in a decrease of rent down to $200 per unit. Since that time, the Rent Control Board took an active role in trying to defend the residents of the mobile home park and seek intervention of the courts by pursuing first injunctive relief and then a receivership action. And recently, in January, the court issued a decision in favor of the Rent Control Board and appointed a receiver, Frank, who sits before you this evening. So the receiver's job in a receivership action is to take control of the property, to essentially step in the shoes of the owner, collect the rents, disperse those rents for expenses, the idea is eventually to create a capital plan to address some of the kind of more systemic problems that you've been facing in the park, including the issues with overflowing at the wastewater plant, dealing with road infrastructure, the collection system infrastructure, water, providing potable water to the properties. So that's the idea, and it's all done with court oversight. So every bill that goes out, a transaction report is provided to the court, and the court reviews it and blesses it to ensure that the money is being spent properly. So that's the idea of a receiver. So finally, there will be, I hope, a better future for the mobile home park. And tonight, the receiver has petitioned the board to determine whether or not the board will allow an increase. And why are they seeking an increase? Because right now they have $14,000 approximately to pay the ordinary operating expenses for the park. So that would be your trash pickup and other kind of routine monthly bills. And that's not sufficient at this point. So he's looking for a small operating increase back to the pre-reduction price, and with the hopes that that can at least put a Band-Aid in and allow some of these more basic services to be provided to you as residents. So it's a public hearing, and we're going to take evidence, or the board will, and they'll have to present the information that they have at this point to justify the rent increase.
So before we move any further, I'm going to have Craig read the hearing notice.
Yep.
In accordance with Chapter 30A of the General Laws, Chapter 88 of the Acts of 2013, and the rules and regulations adopted December 16, 2013, the Easton Rent Control Board will hold a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, January 27th, 2020, in the Colleen A. Corona Boardroom, Easton Town Offices, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass. The hearing will consider the petition submitted by Francis C. Morrissey, Esquire, of Morrissey, Wilson, and Zafiropoulos, LLP, as receiver for a rent increase for property located at 305 Turnpike Street, Easton, Mass. Said petition being treated as a petition for general rent increase under the board's regulation.
Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Jeffrey. I represent Frank Morrissey, who's the receiver.
Good morning. I know a lot of people here. Frank Morrissey. I'm the receiver appointed by Judge Green over the park. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here on short notice. We inherited a stress situation, and this community needs a lot of attention, and that's going to require some funding. I understand Kate pointed out that a few years ago, the rent was reduced as a penalty from $468 a month to $200 a month. And part of that was because the former owner was not applying the funds properly to maintain the infrastructure and the leaching field and the other important systems at the community. We'd like to raise the rent back up to its pre-sanction level, $468. I've had the opportunity to meet with the association a week ago Saturday, and this Saturday I met with many of the residents at the Baptist church up the way. And as Kate pointed out, all of the funds that I collect as receiver are effectively in the custody of the court. The doctrine is called in custodia lex, and the court supervises the disbursement of those funds. I'm accountable to the penny for those funds. I've set up a separate account, an escrow account, a receivership account. It has its own federal employer identification number. The balance in that account today is approximately $16,500. Since I was appointed on January 2nd, the expenses that the receivership estate has incurred has been significant. One of the big budget busters is the removal of the waste from the septic tanks. That's a daily occurrence. The bills on that I've been received just since January 2nd are approximately $70,000. We've had some emergency repairs to a pump. That's another $4,500. We had a snowstorm, not last weekend, but the weekend before, which turned out to be fairly reasonable. But getting that plowing and the salting taken care of, that was $2,500. As you see where this is going, the expenses just this month are probably going to be about $100,000, and the income right now is 16, maybe you'll get up to 19. If we have 100% payment at the $200 rate, the property throws off $19,000 a month, and that's not enough to take care of the safety and other important issues at the property. With me today, not only is my lawyer, Mr. Jeffrey, but Gene Irwin's a very seasoned real estate professional. He's been down there every day. He was at the Baptist church with me both times. And again, I think, given that the previous owner is now no longer in possession, is no longer authorized to collect rent, all the rent is going into a court supervised account, which will have a lot of transparency. And all disbursements ultimately get approved by the court. I'd respectfully ask that the board return the rents to $468 so that they could be used to upgrade the systems at the park and get it to where it should be.
Sure. So I was the only one on the board at the time that we did that rent decrease, and we really didn't intend to do that as a penalty. At the time, we were really hoping that it would incentivize the park owners to they knew we meant business.
Right.
And we were hoping that that would put a fire under them to start doing their job and to do things right. Unfortunately, they didn't move forward with that, and so we certainly couldn't raise, we made it clear with everybody, including them at the time, that when we start to see progress, we understand that you can't run the park on $200 a month for the rents, but we need to see progress, and when we start to see that, we would be willing to have another conversation about raising them up. We'd even hoped that maybe we could do an escrow account type of a thing. It wasn't an issue of the rent, it was an issue of making sure that it was spent properly. At the time, we were told that we couldn't do an escrow because it was beyond the purview of what this rent control board was allowed to do. So we certainly understand that, and we know, the goal is to get the park to be livable. And we really thank you for taking this on. We know that there's not a lot of receivers that have experience with mobile home units, so we know that this is a daunting task. The $16,000 that you talk about, is that $16,000, are you getting any money from the park owners, or are you starting with a blank checkbook pretty much?
The answer is I'm not getting any money from the park owner, the former owner. Well, he's still on title, but he's no longer in control. So the owner has run up big bills with a lot of the vendors. So there's bills that were accrued in December before I was appointed. And it's hard to explain it to someone who hasn't been paid in December. You know, it's now under new management, come out in January and plow the streets or empty the tanks or fix the well. And it's hard to explain that, you know, it takes a while to collect the rent and get the notice out to people. So it's been a challenging transition to get just basic information, life safety information and contact information necessary to operate the park. That's the bad news. The good news is, there's two types of good news. One is there's a very responsible and effective residents association, and they have noticed out the receivership order and noticed out the new situation very, very effectively, organized meetings with me and organized meetings with the residents, and we're going to stay with that process and meet on the weekends on a regular basis to get the information out to people and to identify problems to be fixed. The other bit of good news is that I think there's an exit here. I think there's third parties willing to invest in this park on a permanent basis and get the infrastructure up to where it should be in compliance with all applicable regulations. So I think there's an exit, there's a takeout, there's permanent financing available. The challenge here is going to be to stabilize the park to get to the exit. And just the way receivership works, we have to negotiate a transaction, then we have to get input from the residents and the town, then we present it to Judge Green. Judge Green notices out to former owner, the mortgagee, other interested parties, and it's tested by the court. That's a process that'll take weeks and maybe several months. In the meantime, we've got to keep the lights on, literally, at the park, and we need the income to do it. Now,
Do you have borrowing authority now? or-
I do have borrowing authority, and a receiver's lien comes ahead of all existing liens. Like the current mortgagee, it will be subordinated by every dollar I borrow. And Attorney Jeffries and I have met with potential lenders. He's reaching out to people that lend in this space. And we're in the process of setting up what's called a due diligence room to give people information, whether they're lenders or potential buyers or investors, people who are part of the takeout financing, the opportunity to learn about the park and to come up with a proposal that makes sense for everyone, the residents, the town, and the court, frankly. Those are the three stakeholders I'm concerned about.
Sure.
But again, it's a very fragile asset. There's been underinvestment for many, many years. And it's very difficult to get the information. So far, it's been difficult to get the information from Morgan and his company.
And the court can
The court can help with
help
that.
them, right?
And
Yeah.
we've started the process of trying to chase the records from the owner. And just one other point that
We'll get there.
that, you know, as far as any increase in the rents goes, the money that we collect goes first into the park. So what does that mean? Again, in a receivership, this is all out in the open. It's all going to be submitted to the court. But what we pay first are the necessary expenses of the park. So what we're not paying is, for instance, the mortgage that's on the park. And the bank that holds that mortgage won't be able to take any action without first getting through the court. And the court is not going to let the bank try to take the park back in these circumstances. And I frankly don't think the bank will. But what that means is that every dollar goes first to expenses at the park, to fix the park, to try to maintain the asset. For instance, neither Frank nor I can get paid without court approval, with notice to everybody, and that's so we're not going to get paid out of the increase
Until the
in
end of the
rents
case.
until the end of the case. It's all this money is going to be used to do what should have been done a long time ago, which is to try to fix the problems.
And
that are
unlike a
there.
private owner, the town, and most importantly, the residents, have a right literally to the check register. So what happens is the receiver files an account with the court. And it's a check register, money in, money out, who got paid. And the court reviews it, and I'm accountable to the cent. And it's all in one account, it's not commingled. the former owner had other parks and managers who are located in New York. One of the troubling things I learned was the records concerning the park, important regulatory logs, orders, basic information you need to operate that park in a safe way is not located at the park. Those records were removed several years ago, and apparently they're in New York. And Ethan and his colleagues are in the process of getting those records returned to the park and available to the town and residents and people who need them.
Is there a day-to-day person working at the park still now?
So we inherited a guy, Justin Duff,
Yeah.
from Morgan. Morgan fired him today. But we're in the process of hiring him back, and the estate will hire him, whether as an independent contractor or
As
an employee.
contractor.
And we just have to work out the payroll issues on that. But Mr. Irwin has met with Mr. Duff every day, and we've also polled the people that live there to see if because they know him better than Mr. Irwin and I and Mr. Jeffrey. And the consensus is from the association, the residents I've spoken with, they want him there. So he literally knows where the bodies are buried and where the skeletons are, to mix a bunch of metaphors. And he's been responsive to me, and he's been responsive to Mr. Irwin.
Well, this board worked really hard for many, many years to find solutions and to try to work with the park owner, in a positive way, in a more forceful way. Like I said, we had talked, could we do an escrow? And then finally, over the last 2 years, we pushed to have a receiver. And for those that don't know, it's very, very hard to get the court to appoint a receiver in this circumstance. And it took us about 2 years to be of going back and forth and trying to convince them to do that. So, we are very committed to this. We want everybody in that park to have a safe place to live and to be really proud of it. We don't want to see broken down homes in there. We don't want to see those kinds of problems. We want to be sure that if there's an emergency there, that our emergency response equipment can get down those streets properly. And I really think that this is a great outcome for you and for the people that live there and for the town.
I got to tell you, the town has been very, very supportive of my efforts. Kristen in particular and Michael, I'd give them, I've been doing this for 26 years, I'd give them, my grade would be an A+, but I'm a high grader. They've really, I wouldn't be here in this seat tonight, but for their efforts to schedule an expedited hearing to get the resources available to bring the park up to compliance. And they made life a lot easier for me and for the people that live in the town. They deserve a special recognition for that, it seems to me.
Well, we're glad you said yes, and we're hoping that you don't change your mind. So we'll do everything that we can to help
Thank you.
support you. And I know that it seems, a really great move on your part and the part of the tenants that you're communicating and setting up meetings. So I'm really happy to hear that. Any questions from the board?
I'm just a little concerned about the amount of money, even with the rent increase, the amount of money available to you to do what needs to be done.
As am I. So the top line is the rent. The rent may double tonight, it might not, but we're working on the top line. But we're also working on the expense side. The biggest expense right now is taking draining the septic tanks, removing pumping the septic tanks. We are working on getting that leaching field up, operating again, and so we won't have to remove the waste, either completely eliminate the need to transport the waste or reduce it substantially. So everything's on the table, and some expenses have to accrue. Some, by way of example, an expense that accrues, as Mr. Jeffrey pointed out, is the mortgage. I'm not paying the mortgage until I have enough money to safely operate the park. So interest will accrue, and that may or may not get paid in connection with the exit transaction at the end of the case.
What about-
I agree with you. This is a very fragile asset, and if we and we're also looking at getting a loan into this.
That's
So-
what
so
I
this-
that's what
this-
I was gonna say.
Get the rent up.
Yeah.
The rent makes it easier to borrow, frankly, and increases the value of the home. No one likes to pay more rent. But if the park is throwing off more rent, the homes are more valuable, and it's more easy to borrow against. Get the expenses down, that further makes it easy to borrow against, and then borrow. So Ethan and I met with a funding source on Friday. Ethan's constantly talking to bankers and bank lawyers, trying to find people to fund into make a short-term loan so they can get to a transaction to permanently fix the problem. And you put your finger on it, Dottie put her finger on it. The way a receivership works is the receiver can borrow on a priority basis. The receiver's lien comes ahead of the mortgage, and anybody has a mechanic's lien, things like that. So whoever lends to me will be first on the property, and the proceeds of that loan will go into the receiver account and will be dedicated entirely to bringing the property up to code and taking care of the life safety issues that we're also familiar with.
And
Yeah.
if I could, through the chair, I think it's important to note too that they've reserved their rights to come back to the board once they've done a greater assessment, because right now the capital needs are so prevalent that they need to have a better understanding of what's working, what's not working, what are the critical needs, and which need to be addressed more immediately, but also what are those long-term needs of the park. But that assessment hasn't been done yet, and right now it's just to address the immediate operational needs rather than the capital infrastructure improvements as well.
The other thing that, you said about the borrowing and the stabilizing, that will also help you with people that you need to come to work on that site, because they burned a lot of bridges, and that was part of the trouble that they were having at the end, is they owe a lot of people money. Those people aren't going to come back and work for them.
No.
So, but if they know that somebody new is running it, it's being managed properly, you might get some more cooperation with some of the people that you need to help out with that.
I have a question. So, based on what Kate said, it sounds like there hasn't been a long-term projection as to how long it will take to get things stable. And if that projection were to occur, whether this rent goes up or not is a major factor. Whether you get a loan or not is a major factor. Have you thought of
So
long?
there have been, I haven't seen one, and I'm a lawyer, not an engineer, so even if I looked at one, I'm not sure I would understand what it says. But there have been a couple of reports that have been done as to, including one by the owner that we're trying to get our hands on, as to what is necessary to bring the park up to snuff. And I think, from our perspective, when we understand that in the big picture, it's going to be something that we're going to try to use as a tool to get to a final transaction for the park. And what we're hoping is in addition to figuring out what needs to be done, at the same time, we'll be moving on with a transaction that'll put somebody else in control of the park, because the receivership is a short-term fix, and that the longer-term picture, it needs to be a longer-term.
This
Operator.
information's been developed by the
Yeah.
town in the litigation, and it's been developed by the Residents Association. It's a seven-figure investment to get the stormwater systems back up and the leaching field where it should be, and the wastewater pump. This has been analyzed over several years, so the information is out there. It's a seven-figure investment. And I don't want to quantify it here because I'm new to the situation, but it's a significant investment, and we're not going to be able to get there with the rent increase. But the same way when you, and maybe this is too simplistic, but I'm a simplistic person. How much money you can borrow for your house depends on what your income is. The income of this park is the rent. So as the rent goes up, they can borrow more to fix it. And that's not a complicated issue. What's complicated here is the years of underinvestment and the years of failure to abide by the health issues and the
Disrepair.
DEP issues,
Yeah.
and all that needs to be brought into compliance, and that piece is complicated, is gonna require a significant investment. But we're not gonna get there with just with a rent, and I think you made that point. I don't see your. Craig made that point, and I think everyone gets it in the room. That
just-
we're gonna have to attack it on every front.
Right.
And just to be clear, hopefully, he's not gonna be the one fixing it in the long term, the big picture. The short term,
That's my
yes.
wife, she doesn't want me to fix it. Go to my house.
I mean, hopefully what we do is we have, we find somebody who everybody is comfortable with. And again, this is an open process, so we don't get to make the decision. We submit to the court what we think the transaction should be, and everybody gets to come in and present their views, just like this. You can all show up in court and
Yeah, so the standard is ordinary course. Any transaction that's outside the ordinary course, a big transaction, we're gonna borrow a lot of money and, do something with the systems, that all gets approved by the court. And unless the court signs off on it after notice to the association's attorney, after notice to the town's attorney, notice to other interested parties, it doesn't happen. And everyone has a chance to participate, and everyone has literally their day in court. But I guess what I'd like to emphasize is this is a very fragile situation because of the years of neglect. And I wake up at night, wondering about, what's gonna happen if we have a real storm, or the guy that's pumping the septic tanks gets discouraged. So I appreciate the cooperation we're getting from the town, because it's a serious situation. I think the good news is it's a situation with a solution. We just have to stabilize this to get to the solution, and the solution's a few months away, but that's right around the corner.
So right now, we have to stop the bleeding, and we have to, it's gonna take you a while to figure out exactly what's going on there, even with the information that you have. We've seen their records before. You're gonna need to really kind of start from scratch on a lot of that stuff, so.
we kind of figured that.
Chuck, did you have any questions?
Well, no, the gentleman answered most of mine based on Select Board Member Lamb's question. And even though Mr. Morrissey, it doesn't sound like I would want you to come do any personal repairs at my house either. But I will tell you that I'm impressed with the information that you've given me tonight, because I came on a little bit late in the process. The answers you've given me, and I'm doubly impressed, Mr. Morrissey, with the passion you're showing for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to open it up for audience questions, but I want to just say that how this works. So if you want to make a comment, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you. We're going to ask you to come to this microphone and state your name and your address. We want to keep, there's a lot of people here, and we have a limited amount of time, so we want to keep the questions very directly to the rent increase. We know the history. We don't want to go rehash all that. Just if you have a comment specific to the rent increase. So first up, we'll start in the back. Come on up. You have to come up to this microphone. And please remember to try to keep it brief and concise, because you have a lot of neighbors that want to comment also.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Brenda Carter. I'm unit number 12. When I first came to this park, the rent was $330. And the issue originated with the rent increase, with it jumping so fast. And I'd like to say, on behalf of people who don't have a lot of money, we have, what do you call it? I have mental disabilities, but we're looking at people who don't have this much money all at once to come up with. And I'm afraid that a lot of people are going to be forced out of their homes because they're not able to pay it.
I appreciate your comments.
And I do appreciate you listening to me.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for holding this hearing tonight. I'm Tom Ellsworth. I'm an attorney with Moriarty, Troyer, and Malloy. I'm the attorney who's represented the Residents Association at the park for 3 years or more now, and have worked side by side with town council's office. You know what the fight has been, and this has been a really positive experience since the receiver's been appointed. The association couldn't be happier with the efforts by the receiver, Frank Morrissey, and by Gene Irwin, who's on the site every day. They're in almost daily contact with me to keep me apprised of what's going on. In addition to what you've heard, they've given of their own time to come and meet with the board and me 2 Saturdays ago, and then we met again this past Saturday with a greater meeting with the residents. So it's been a fantastic experience, and I just can't tell you what a joy it is to stand before you to have this discussion. The association board has deliberated. They've had, like I said, a prolonged meeting with the receiver, and they fully support this rent increase and ask you to vote on it tonight and to vote for the full increase tonight for all the reasons that you heard from Attorney Morrissey. And I won't repeat them because it's very clear that it's needed. The individual residents may feel differently, and of course they have the right to do that, and will speak up and tell you that if they feel differently. But I'm here to tell you that the association board has very carefully deliberated this rent increase that's being requested tonight. And they're in full support, and they ask that you vote in favor.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sir, in the back?
How you doing? My name is William Bowman. I live
To the
in,
phone, up to the mic, so we can hear you.
I live in number 40.
What's your
and,
name? I'm sorry.
My name's William Bowman.
William
I live in unit number 40. And as like Brenda was trying to say, I moved in 2011. The rent was $340 for a few years. And they had jumped it up over $100 to fix the park, from 3-something to 4, what it was before it went to 200. My question is, for the years that we were paying that, excuse me, the extra $100 and something, where did all that money go to fix up the stuff that needs to be fixed? Like,
So that's why the park is in the condition that it's in right now. The
Well-
park owners did not, they took that money and they did not invest it. I can't speculate on what happened with it, but it didn't get invested into the park the way that we anticipated, the way that it should have.
right.
That's not what this is about. We can't go back and fix that right now. The choice is essentially, we have a receiver that will proposedly, we're gonna raise the rent if we vote on that, and we raise the rent back to where it is. That's the only chance this park has. If we don't do that, nobody's gonna have a place to live. There's not really much of a choice on this.
Well, no, I get it, but my point, the question, like, when they already had raised it, we paid the extra $100 for years, and they didn't do nothing with the money we already paid, and now they want to raise it again.
They're not raising it.
So-
We would be raising it, and it would go to a receiver that will actually use the money for what it's for. The park owners are not involved anymore. They won't have access to that money. So what they did with it before, that's nothing that we can do anything about.
Oh, all right.
So
All right.
I know it's terrible, and we feel for the residents, believe me, but this board's been working so hard for a solution on this for a long time, so that
So
it
to make
wouldn't be
us
this long.
pay for it ourselves and then just hand it back over to Morgan after
It's
fixing?
not gonna go to.
It's not going to Morgan.
I'm sorry then.
No.
I thought they went to receivership, and I misunderstood that, but I was just curious
Sure.
what
No,
the extra
and-
money went to before.
No, and
Really
just-
appreciate you coming tonight and coming up to ask
And
that
to
question.
be clear, sir, so if we went to court and said, let's give the park back to Morgan, you
Yeah.
guys have the opportunity to come to court and say, no way.
Yeah,
So
well-
it's not gonna happen, I can tell you right now.
All right.
We're not gonna, Morgan's coming nowhere near this park from here on
I
out.
appreciate it, thank you, I just was not sure where it was
Thank you,
going
Mr. Bowman.
afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, Mark Josephatis, 235 on 305 Turnpike Street. What I seen all these years, okay, the rent increase, that's okay, but the thing that I look at, how much is it gonna take to fix this place, and how much really rent you're gonna get? We're gonna say 100 units at $468 a month. What's it gonna take to really do some real work to it instead of spending it on pumping this place and just throwing money after.
It's math, right? So,
Right.
so you have to
And a
have
lot of
money,
people
and
don't-
you have the expenses.
Okay.
We're hoping that everybody pays their rent, because if people don't pay their rent, that's also a problem, because then you don't have enough money to do it.
That's
So
why I'm worried.
This is the Hail Mary. This is the last-ditch effort to
Yes.
do everything we can to
That's
make this be successful. So-
Why I'm worried about that, because there's a lot of people don't even pay the 200.
Right.
And there's abandoned homes in there.
Yep.
You need to get new homes in there, get the revenue up, get the income in, to do all this. I just worried about
It's a
that.
vicious circle, because you're not going to have new homes in there until it's a place where people want to live and these problems go away. So if you can get some investment in there and some
Yep.
stabilization, then it could attract to fill those empty slots. So that will certainly help.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Reynolds. I've lived in the
Off the
park.
microphone.
Oh, sorry. My name's Jennifer Reynolds. I've lived in the park for 14 years. I support the rent increase to make our park a better place to live and not be ashamed by the way the front of that park looks to say that you live there. My only question and hope is that it goes in effect as of March 1st and not February 1st, because February 1st is in a couple of weeks and not even a week. I just ask that it goes up on the 1st of March and not February.
Okay.
Other than that, that's all.
We'll take that into consideration.
you.
Thank you.
Jen.
Picture?
Hi, I'm Julie Lowell, number 36 on 3rd Street, and I have a question concerning when I moved in about a year and a half ago. We got a lease from Morgan. I mean, I understand the rent increase, and it's not bad at all, but how is that determined with our lease?
I don't know what your lease says. The attorneys can take a look at that.
If you want to give me a copy, I'd be happy to take a look at it, but the concept here, at least from our perspective, is that when we move forward with a new transaction, that there's going to be a new person there who is going to be a responsible operator, whoever that might be, and that's who you're going to be dealing with going forward. So you may have to sign a new lease. It all depends on how that plays out. But as far as the lease with Morgan goes, it's under the receiver's control at this point. So Morgan is, so if there are questions about it, if there are issues with it, we're happy to talk to you about it.
I want to agree with Dottie right now. I think and the association, paying more rent paradoxically is going to make your
It's gonna
homes
make-
more
yeah, I
more
completely- I
valuable and your
completely
life
understand
better.
all that, and
But
I
that being
agree.
said, I get it. Some people don't have the resources right now to absorb the rent increase, or there's a concern about a lease, a deal that Morgan cut with you. I'm going to work with people. I'm not interested in evicting people that for if they don't have the resources to absorb the new rent, and I'll work with them. But one thing I'm not interested in doing, and this came out at the meeting, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with you, but I understand there's some minority residents, there's been some problems with criminal problems at the park. Now, I'm not willing to work with someone who's not following the law, but if someone has a documented inability to absorb the rent increase, I will work with you. But I'd like to encourage, and again, I'm just laying my cards out on the table. I'd encourage people, if you have the money, to absorb the new rent, because it's going to bridge us to get to a transaction that's going to make life better for everybody and make your investment in your home worth that much more money. So I'm right up the street. I'm happy to come down to the park. There's really not some space in the park, but maybe borrow the Baptist church again, or meet in a common room here and work with anyone if you don't have the way to get up to my office, and I'm right up the street in Braintree. But we're going to make sure people have I'm here to make sure people have a soft landing. But I think everybody gets that the park is in tough shape, and it's in fragile shape, and we need all we need is another big systems failure or a natural disaster or something, And it's gonna be a very, very difficult situation, so we need the resources to take the steps to mitigate things until we get to a transaction that's gonna improve all the systems at the park. But so but when I leave, just give me your contact information, we can set up a time and meet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Kristen? I see you with your hand up, and we will get you. I just want to make sure everyone else has a chance to speak first, okay?
Good evening. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Kristen Kennedy. I'm the Director of Health and Community Services. A lot of you have seen my name, and it's been floated around in a bunch of things. And as I'm standing in the back and listening to some of these concerns, I'm going to pledge tonight to continue doing what we've been doing and work with Attorney Morrissey and Attorney Ellsworth and the association and see if we can set up a day very quickly where our outreach coordinator and our veteran service officer are made available maybe at one of these Saturday meetings, and they can help and possibly help you identify fuel assistance, SNAP, SHINE benefits that maybe aren't being taken advantage of, that will help you bridge that gap with the rent increase. So we're going to pledge to try to get something like that on the books in the next couple of weeks. I hope you'll all turn out and encourage everybody to turn out, because there are benefits and resources out there, and we'll just help get them right in your hands and help hopefully move this forward.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Brenda Carter, Unit 12 also. I have a question. All right, I accept that, well, you have no choice. And I do appreciate everything you're trying to do to help us and our situation. My question is, after we reach this level of rent, will we then start back with controlling anything further? Will there be 4%? Do we still have control of it after that? Or can they come back and say, now we want 600? Or now we want 7?
The attorney could come back and petition for another rent increase if they need to.
But I thought it could only, like, I understand going back to the 4, whatever it was. But once you're there, I mean, so many people are going to struggle just to make that happen. And I don't want to have to come back crying and say, what, another 100? Are you serious?
I don't want you to worry about, let's just take it for what we have right now. I really don't want you to lose sleep over this.
Because I thought it was a 4%.
We're not looking at any percentages. We're not looking at anything specific in the future. We're going to do this if the board votes on it, and we're going to take the steps that we have to take, to move forward with it. And that's going to be a lot of investigative work. These attorneys are going to be working for free on this till a long ways into it. They're making themselves available. The town has done everything, to offer resources. We want this to be successful.
Yes.
We're on your side.
And I want to thank you for that.
We're not going to just randomly try to increase the rent. We're very thoughtful and deliberate about this when we do it, and we really do understand how difficult, you wouldn't be able to find a place to live for $200 a month.
Oh, I understand
we know
that.
But
we've had
we
it
also
good.
know that going to $1,000 a month is, we wouldn't be able to do that either. So we're trying to be very thoughtful and considerate of how we do this. This doesn't bring it up to what it was before. When we did the rent decrease the last time, we told people that this is probably going to go up again. So don't get used to the $200. It was a lot.
I really liked the 200.
Well, it was a lot longer of a time than we thought. We thought it would be raised up quicker because the work was getting done.
Oh boy, I've enjoyed it. I want to thank all of you for taking the time and hearing and being fair with everybody here. Okay. And I do understand, and I support.
And we hope you'll take advantage of these meetings and see what kind of assistance is available to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Come on up, Scott.
My name's Scott Welch, Lot 2B, Main Ave. I'm the president of the association at this point. And I feel bad, like for Brenda and others like that. But the reality of it is we need the money to get going. And a lot of them at the time, not everybody, was paying $468 at that time. So in our attorneys, all the attorneys, Attorney Ellsworth and Frank, when we met first, said right from the start, don't get used to this $200. As a matter of fact, we even mentioned about maybe putting it maybe in a fund of our own to, if something happened, so that we'd have it. But the reality of it is we need this money to get going.
Yeah.
And as you stated, that's not enough money to even get the place fixed. But it is a start, and that's what we need, and that's why the board 2 weeks ago voted on that to get back up to the way it was.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Pam, come on up.
Good evening, Select Board, and I thank you very much for everything you've done for us over the years, including rent control. Thank you very much to the town of Easton for rent control. We wouldn't be here without rent control. I was as the alternate, I'm Pam Widdop, number 29 3rd Street, South Easton, been there 50 years. I was at as the alternate director, I was at the meeting with the board when Attorney Morrissey presented his plan. And he sold me. I think you all are familiar with my knowledge on everything that's been going on over specifically these past 16 years since Morgan Management bought the community. And I understood everything that he had to say, and he didn't really cover it all. He sold me on this rent increase. He had a short-term plan, which is what we need now. We need a short-term plan to get the mandated repairs taken care of. And there's only one way that that can happen, is for the rent to go up now so that he can have the cash to show the lenders. I mean, who is going to go for a loan for anything without income? They're going to laugh you out of the office. So he sold me, I want to say that, and I also want to say that I played the devil's advocate at the board meeting, and I argued waiting a month or cutting it in half.
In a nice way.
But I understand that mathematically just won't work. This receiver, very brave Irishman, has taken on this job that is monumental, and he needs operating cash to get the job done. He started with 0, and you all know from your experience with Morgan Management that even though Morgan Management was ordered to give him all of his assets, all of his cash, all of his records within 48 hours of January 2nd, he didn't even get the rent roll till the end of this month. So, God bless you. That's all I can say.
God bless you, Pam and Scott and Tom Aylesworth. I wouldn't have any money in the bank but for you three. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've done a great job for your neighbors and for your community. You're 100% right. The order said that the rent roll with the addresses for everyone needed to be delivered to me within 2 business days, two calendar days of entry of the order. That didn't happen for a number of reasons. And the association and their council stepped up and got it done. And the town has helped out quite a bit as well with identifying people who live there and helped me develop the information I need to run the place. So, but for Pam and Scott and Kristen and Michael and Tom Aylesworth, we'd be in bad shape right now.
Tom Aylesworth is a godsend to the Easton Mobile Homeowners Association. He's a godsend. So I want to thank you, and I want to ask the residents to please try to find it in their budget to pay it. I'm going to, and I have a tight budget, I live on Social Security, that's it. A lot of my time is spent volunteering for the Tenants Association to help my fellow residents, because I care about you. So I'm gonna find the money to pay it. And I'm sure that, you know, the first month is like the Attorney Morrissey said, he's not gonna be beating down your door if you can't manage the first month. But anyways, I just needed to say that, and mostly I want to thank the town and the Board of Selectmen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to take the vote now. We're going a lot longer than we had plotted out for this part of the meeting. I do want to say, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I definitely also want to chime in and thank Attorney Aylesworth. You've done a great job for the tenants, and we really appreciate that. And our own staff, Kristen, Michael, Connor, and the boards that have been on this board for many years. Former Selectman Dan Smith was just there a second ago. He's the one that made the motion back when to reduce the rent to $200. Select board members do not go to trials when that happens. Selectman Smith and myself did go to that trial so that the tenants that went there were not worried. We were there to support them, and it means a lot to us. It meant a lot to him to be here tonight to see this through. So we are on your side. We want to make this work. And with that, if somebody would like to make a motion for a rent increase to $468 a month, and I will ask for it to be effective February 1st. We've got to get this going. And the tenants who have a problem with that can talk with the Tenants Association and with Attorney Morrissey. But
So moved.
Second.
And if
did
I
I
could,
have to do anything specific?
can I make a recommendation that you have to base it on the fact that the board found the testimony provided by the receiver to be credible relative to the operating and maintenance expenses that they're facing immediately?
Yes.
Hey, can you put that in writing and get it to my office for our minutes?
Sure thing.
I'm not going to repeat that, I'll just say so moved.
And a second?
Second.
That's Craig and Mark, all in favor? Unanimous. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess while we wait for the room to clear. Oh, I'm sorry, never mind. I forgot.
Minutes on the agenda.
Thank you. Great job.
Take a look at the minutes for March 12th and April 9th.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good, how are you? It's good to see you.
I didn't say what it is.
Also, it's always good to see you. What's that?
This week
Yeah. Yeah. Been here for...
Glad you have a great night.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, you guys are in good hands. You see a lot of changes.
This is Frank, my old pal. If you need a meeting,
Things are moving in the right direction.
you know, and just give me a little time to set it up. No, just, we should coordinate Kristen and
one-day beer and wine liquor license.
So moved. Oh, Second, whatever.
Craig and then Chuck, first and second. All in favor? Unanimous. Great. Thank you. Next, for the Affordable Housing Trust, proposed acquisition and presentation of 26 Pequannock Ave.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm Wayne Beitler, Community Planner, Staff Support to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Nikki Destumian, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust.
The Affordable Housing Trust has several different priorities, and we work to create and support affordable housing for different household structures of different types at different price points. One of our priorities is to create affordable family housing. It is one of the more difficult things to do. One of the big barriers is finding buildable lots at a reasonable price. A median single-family home in Easton is, I believe, $450,000. The trust has worked over the last several years to create home ownership opportunities in the $250,000 range. For the last several months, since last spring, we've been working on our due diligence for a parcel of land at 26 Pequannock Avenue. The Easton Housing Authority owns it currently. It has a derelict structure on it that has been uninhabited for several years. Because of procurement requirements, it is very expensive to renovate or rebuild as a housing authority. Estimates were about $800,000 to do so. They got state permission to sell the parcel and use the proceeds to acquire an already existing home somewhere in Easton so that they could still have an affordable family unit. They have very, very few affordable family units as the housing authority. And being a buildable lot, the Affordable Housing Trust was interested in acquiring it at a fair price and to then issue an RFP for a nonprofit developer to create 1 or 2 units of family housing, which is something the trust has done with great success at other properties in town on Electric Avenue and Highland Avenue. And we have an accepted offer for $235,100. We have an appraisal that finds the land value only for the property of $253,000. We've done due diligence. There is no asbestos, meaning demolition costs would be quite reasonable. We estimate about $8,000. Our intent is, if this board agrees, to acquire the property, demolish the derelict structure, issue the RFP, and have a nonprofit developer build 1 or 2 units of family housing. We look on this as an opportunity to expand Easton's stock of affordable family housing, which is one of our chief priorities as the trust.
Great. Any questions? So we know that you've been working on this for a long time.
Yes,
I know
ma'am.
that when I was on the trust years ago, we were talking about this property. So thank you very much for your efforts on this. Not just this, but you've had a lot of great things going on the trust for a while now. So it's great work. I have a motion here. Craig, if you want to read
Sure.
this.
Before I do that, I just want to say that Chuck and I had the opportunity to be with you guys on Electric Avenue, so we've seen some of the great work
Thank you.
that you do, so thank you very much.
Thank you. This is the correct no, this is corrected.
Oh, this is correct, okay. I hereby move that the Select Board vote to authorize the Town of Easton Affordable Housing Trust Fund to acquire the property at 26 Pequannock Avenue for no more than $235,100 from the Easton Housing Authority for the purpose of conveying the property to a nonprofit developer to construct permanently deed-restricted affordable housing contributing to Easton's subsidized housing inventory, and further, to authorize Dottie Fulgenetti, Chair of the Select Board, to execute and enter in any and all documents necessary to effectuate, 1, the acquisition of the property from the Easton Housing Authority, and 2, the conveyance of the property to a nonprofit developer for the purpose of constructing permanently deed-restricted affordable housing contributing to Easton's subsidized housing inventory.
Second?
All in favor? Unanimous?
Absolutely.
It
Craig was a motion,
Craig and
second
Chuck.
from Chuck. Dottie, I just want to say that Wayne had asked, and only because you had 3 meetings and multiple hours of stuff to get through tonight, that we do have time. We will make time at some point, maybe in the spring, to have the Affordable Housing Trust come in and do a more comprehensive update, because they have been doing so much good work that all of you have identified. So that'll be something we'll do on a less stacked agenda to give Bev a breathing room it needs.
We'd love to come in and talk with you about that.
Great.
Fun stuff.
Talk about all the wins. We like it. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
very
Thank you
much.
for what you're doing.
And we'll sign this and get this up to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, next, we have an open seat for the Economic Development Council, and we have 2 applicants. So is Matt Whitman here? Matt, you want to come up, introduce yourself?
Sure. Sit, stand.
Whatever you're more comfortable with.
Stand.
And just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you want to be on the Economic Development Council.
So my name's Matt Whitman. I'm 29 years old. Moved to Easton about a year and a half ago. My wife is originally from town. We live down on William Street. And I've been looking to get involved in the town government. I was involved in the city government in Cambridge, where I lived previously, on the Participatory Budget Committee. And so I'm looking to get involved in the Economic Development Council in the hopes to help convince people to invest in the town. I have a background in marketing, specifically digital marketing, operations, project management, a lot of spreadsheeting, a lot of budgeting. I feel like it's an area I could be very helpful in, and I think as a young homeowner in town, I have a good eye for sort of businesses, things people are looking for in the town. You know, we picked it as a very attractive spot because we could afford it, had great schools. It's quiet, maybe a little too quiet. I think there's a lot of really great opportunity for development in town, and it's something I'm really interested in, and I'd like to be involved in the local government, either in this position or another one for sure.
Now, it also says on here, the Shoveltown Cultural District Management Team. Are you interested in that as well, or?
Yes, I confess to not knowing too much about that management team, but as somebody who lives right downtown, I'm really interested and excited anytime I see construction going on downtown. There was a juicery sign up for a little bit that went away, which was a sad day for my wife and I. But you know, I think I'm pretty committed to seeing that center of town being a little more vibrant.
Sure.
Certainly, you know, there have been some new businesses which have come in the time that I have been dating and married to my wife, which has been exciting.
Well, the Economic Development Council is, you know, to impact economic development in Easton. The Shoveltown Cultural District Management Team is, Easton has is a designated cultural district, and that does go hand in hand with economic development, but it's a little bit different. They use arts and culture as a way to drive attraction to certain areas in town, almost like a travel and tourism department, if you will. So they are looking for people on their board also that are interested in arts and culture and promoting that and working with businesses. So it is a little bit different, but just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it might have been one of the ones I listed on the application.
Yeah. All right, terrific. Any
Well,
questions
thank you.
from the board? This board meets at noon on the second Thursday of the month. Is that a
That
challenge for you?
is a challenge for me. I work in Boston and can be flexible in terms of, I was working from home today, I had a few appointments, so it is something I could make work, but I guess I assumed maybe it would be in the evenings.
It's one of the few committees that does meet during the day, and the reason for that, it's supposed to be like local business people to be involved in the council, and it's like a lunch hour kind of a thing.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, it's something I could probably accommodate, but if as a factor to consider, it probably is something you should consider, is that, you know, I do work in the city, so.
Okay.
Full transparency.
The Shoveltown Cultural District meets at night, so
Well,
that
there you
might
go.
it might be a
It's a hard
better
sell.
It might be a better fit for you.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe, and it, you know, might
But,
be easier if.
But also, just so you know, if you go onto Documents on Demand on our website,
I do frequently.
you can alert it so that when there's an agenda from the Economic Development Council, it comes to you.
Oh, sure.
And if that happens, and you happen to be around that day, and you wanted to come to the meeting, we're really like kind of a think tank. We're not like voting on policy per se.
Sure.
So anyone that comes to that can participate in the conversation, bring their ideas, and be a part of it. So that might, might give you a taste for it also.
Yeah, definitely.
And your skills and earnestness would certainly be welcome as other board positions come up, please.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Matt.
And next up is Dan Smith. Dan, if you want to introduce yourself, and a man who needs no introduction.
No. So for a lot of the same reasons Matt is eager to get involved in town politics in our local community is, Jen and I have been here for 15 years now, and we've established roots and, raising our family here. So we've got, 3 children now. We started to get active in the community as a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, was fortunate enough to be elected to the Select Board, served for a number of years, and now I'm eager to get back engaged, especially with this council, with this group and this team as they've moved an agenda forward that's, promoting a lot of the great attributes of this community and the infrastructure that's coming to being and fruition. It's time for those investments to pay dividends, and I like to be a part of that team and moving that message forward and reaching out to the networks that we all share and beyond to attract business and drive those opportunities and hopefully be a part of the team that brings them home. So I'm excited. It's been a while. I haven't been in here for a few years, so excited to be
And for full
considered.
disclosure, you were the one who started the council, so, you were in it in the beginning, in the
I
inception of it.
appreciate that. It was also an idea that was well received too.
Right.
It's we were all in this together, and there's a lot of work still to be done. But yeah, no, I'm proud of that. I am certainly proud of that.
Great. And would you still be able to make it to the
I will,
Thursday
yeah.
meetings?
Yeah, unless there's some unforeseen conflict, but I'll build it into my schedule and do my best to make it work week, month in, month out, and it's going to be more than just a meeting a month. It's all the work that takes place in the periphery that'll help as well. So,
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
I should have asked if any of the board members had any questions. I'm sorry, it's been a long night already. Any questions from anyone on the board?
No, I don't have any for Dan.
No, thank you.
Right. So we have to vote, and it is a roll call vote. I'll say this for this and for the other positions that come up. This is one of the challenging things that we do, and we love it, especially when we get new people to town that really want to participate. And, unfortunately, we sometimes don't have enough seats to fill for the applicants that are there. But what we definitely try to do is find other spots. Even if there was nothing available tonight, we'd like to find out what skill set people have so that we can match them with something. In this case, for the Economic Development Council, I think it seems like it would be a lot better for Dan schedule-wise for this. And I would vote to support Dan for the Economic Development Council's position.
The roll call vote?
Yep. We need a motion and a second, and then the roll call vote.
So moved.
Second?
Lamb Smith?
Barger Smith?
Full Janetti Smith?
King Smith?
All right, thank you. And definitely, we'll try to get you into the Shoveltown Cultural District one. And I think it will be a really good way to meet people in the town, too. And I'd be happy to meet, for coffee or talk with you on the phone or anything for any questions that you have about any of the boards and committees, and
Thank you. I appreciate
make sure that you're where you want to be.
Thanks. Yeah,
All right, thank you so much. And thank you.
Dan,
guys.
welcome back, Dan.
Good night, thank you.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a application for the Cultural Council with Ashley Rayfeld. Come on up, Ashley. You could just introduce yourself and tell us about your interest.
Yeah, so my name's Ashley Rayfeld. I was actually a graduate of Oliver Ames High School, and as an adult, I have circled back and decided to raise my family here. I have a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old, and so, viewing the community 20 years ago from a child's lens, if you could, in comparison to a young adult with little kids, I'm proud to wear my leather jacket around town. It's completely different. So I really just want to start participating more in communal events, and I think that this program that is being offered and has being offered, it's amazing. It says a lot to have face-to-face contact, and there's a lot of instances where people just jump on social media to comment, and so bringing the community together to comment on an art piece or attend a show and play a role in deciding what's being offered is really exciting, and I really want to take part of that. I hope to be on board. Catherine's been great in regards to just showing me things that they've done, projects that they've already worked on, and it's a laundry list of activities and events. So I'm just excited to take part of it, and I hope you guys will have me.
It's a great opportunity, and Easton really does focus a lot on the arts and culture. It was a lot of work to be named a cultural district, which is different than the Cultural Council, for those that might not know. But we really take a lot of pride in all of the offerings that we have, and we have a really great community, like you said, that participates in a lot of these. So really excited about your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
You're
or
aware
comments?
this is a June 30, 2020 position? Okay.
Yeah, get my feet wet.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion, a second, and a roll call?
So moved.
Second.
Craig and Mark.
Lamb, Rayfeld.
Barger, Rayfeld.
Full Janetti, Rayfeld.
King, Rayfeld?
Congratulations. The town clerk will notify you of what you have to do. You'll have to get sworn in. And congratulations that your two little ones are going to get to go to a brand new school. Yay for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Human Rights Committee, this is also uncontested, so you must be Stephanie? I'm Stephanie. Stephanie, come on up. As people trickle away, it's easier to narrow down who's here. So you know the drill.
Okay, so just explain a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
So my name is Stephanie Kantav. I have lived in Easton almost 7 years now. My husband and myself and his 2 children, so my stepchildren. I've worked for the state for 20 years, over 20 years now, working with children with mental illness and really kind of underprivileged families and connect to them to supports and services. So, and personally, my family is of different races, includes LGBTQ, and it's just important to me to live in a space and raise kids in a space that's safe and open to people that's free of kind of racism and bigotry and hate. So I just wanted to get more involved. I read that there was an opening, so I figured I would try out for it.
Well, it's a great committee, and they do a lot of really great things.
Yes.
That really impactful things for the community. So I'm really happy that you're eager to be on that. Craig, you're on that board. Do you want to?
I can't say enough good things about the members of that terrific group of people, and I'm excited for the opportunity to have you join us.
Thank you.
Somebody would like to make a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second?
Craig and Chuck, roll call vote.
Lamb, Kantav.
Barger, Kantav.
Janetti, Kantav.
King, Kantav?
It's official, so you'll get notified.
Thank you.
Notified by the clerk. And I also want to just mention to you that there is a new nonprofit in Easton called Raising Multicultural Kids.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you've heard of them.
No.
They do have presence on Facebook, and they do have a website. And it's a really great organization that is doing things to support multicultural families. And they are doing things like looking at what kind of books kids read at an early age, and do they reflect the people that are in our community. Some really great things. So they meet once a month, and if you want, I could reach out to you and make that connection.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
They are an outstanding group.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I feel like I'm trying to upsell tonight.
Just keep it going.
Okay, a departmental update from the town clerk.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you tonight, Danielle.
I thought all those people were here to hear about elections and what's happening in the town clerk's office. It's a little
They're
quieter.
here in spirit.
They're here in spirit. Okay, maybe those at home will watch this from the comfort of their homes. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come in, speak to you a little bit, tell you what's going on in our office. The town clerk's office is generally quite busy in January, normally, with processing census forms. I'm happy to report that We have gotten a really good response so far to the census. We sent out over 9,500 of the forms, and we've received about 5,000 back and processed 5,000 back so far. I would anticipate another 2,500 to complete that cycle, and so those folks at home, if you have your census form, I would remind them to send them in. It does affect your voter status, and this is a very, very busy election year for us.
It also affects our funding, right, in certain areas?
Sure. Well, I'm going to get into, if I may, talk a little bit at the end about the federal census, which is different than the local town census that goes out every January. So that's a really good question. This year in particular, both need to be returned.
Okay, great.
And so we sent ours out about a month earlier than normal, hoping that we could get a jump on the federal one, get the responses back, and not necessarily confuse people by getting both of them at the same time. And as I mentioned, with a busy election year, it does affect voter status and whether or not people need to show IDs, fill out additional forms. I will say that people have a little bit of time before that happens, but with the presidential election in November coming up, I would encourage them to just take care of this, sign the form. If there's no changes, the form also needs to be returned to our office. We've been busy with dog licenses. We have done about 54%, 1,500 dog licenses in the last 6 weeks. I give kudos to both Pam and Peter. They've been working really hard on both the census process and the dogs. Last year we had 2,700 dogs, which is 1,000 more than when I started here as the town clerk. We've really worked hard as a team, putting together some software that's working, real good communications, and as you know, dog licensing is a public health thing. It's us verifying that everybody has the rabies and the dogs are safe to be in our community. So we're pretty proud of that.
I did mine online, and because I'm not here enough that I could fill out the paperwork and drop off the check. But it was really easy, and I think I got it back like next day. So
yeah,
a really good process.
I think we have about 800 out of those that have already done it online this year, and that's really what we've been gearing towards. Now, some people online isn't for everybody, and we get that. It's $1 additional to have it mailed to you, but it certainly does, the convenience I think is well worth it.
Right.
And it does come to you pretty quickly. So that's our general stuff that keeps us usually busy in January and in the beginning months of the year. We have 4 scheduled elections for 2020. So 2020 has been one of those things that we've been really in our office preparing for quite some time in order to be able to handle a presidential election here that comes upon us every 4 years. The presidential primary will be on March 3rd. And we will be fortunate enough to have a special also this year. So our office will have 6 elections, 4 regularly scheduled programming elections for this year, and then 2 to fill the vacancy in Precinct 6 for Rep. O'Connell's vacant seat. So she became the mayor in Taunton and submitted her resignation, and that created this special election. So we'll have a dual election, which basically is 2 elections on the same day for Precinct 6 on the date of the presidential primary. And then on March 31st, we will have the general election, because the other one's a primary, also for Precinct 6 only. And you'll see one of the agenda items that I'm asking for tonight is for you to change the polling location for that general election. The only Precinct 6 election on March 31st, I'm asking for you to change that polling location from Oliver Ames High School to this room right here. And for obvious reasons, I think the biggest reason is that it just makes sense not to put the schools out for a day for one precinct. And especially in a year that we're spending so much time in their buildings, that I think it makes more sense to have it here. So that is one of the items that will be on your agenda after I could tell you about all the other elections. So we have our local election. We've had quite a few candidates coming out, so it's great to see. I believe the March 6th is the deadline in order for people to take out papers for that. It's great to see so many people coming out and taking out papers. It's always great to see that in a local election. We'll have the state primary will be on September 1st, which is prior to Labor Day this year. That's something kind of new and different. They're usually right after, or sometimes the Thursday. So it will be exactly 1 week prior to Labor Day, on the Tuesday, excuse me. And then the presidential election will be November 3rd. The presidential election will bring early voting with it, which is something that came into effect in 2016. So we've already seen 2 November elections that require early voting. It will be 11 days of early voting in this room prior to that presidential election, and the Board of Registrars may designate additional off-sites as they have in the past, but we're in the process of discussing that. But the state and legislation recently did just change things and approved to have early voting for the presidential primary. So this is the first time that we'll be having early voting for a primary election and certainly for the presidential primary. So this room on February 24th through the 28th will be for early voting for anybody who can't make it on election day, or also it's no excuse absentee where they can just come and vote early. It's during all business hours. There will not be any off-site locations for the early voting for the primary, and there's no weekend dates like there are when we have the 11 days. So it's Monday through Friday during town hall operation hours that we'll be having the early voting. One of the other things that I have on the agenda that I had asked for is for, in order to kind of notify, as I did in 2018, the public, doing a know before you go campaign. You might have heard me say that in previous elections. We've already started that for this election, for the presidential primary. You can go onto our website, take a look at the know before you go link, and also the early voting link, and all of the information that I just went over is on there. But for the presidential election, I'd like to take it one step further, as I did previously in large elections, and ask for your permission to put in the water bills, a know before you go campaign with the early voting times and locations, and how do voters come prepared, you know, those 5 things that they should know before they arrive here, so that everybody can have a smooth day when they come in to vote. So that's one of the other things that I'm asking you about. And the third thing that I'm asking for is the Secretary of State's office has recommended that clerks in Massachusetts talk to their Board of Selectmen about an electioneering policy for early voting. So the Mass General Law that covers that 150-foot area that's safe for voters to come in without being harassed or to have any type of political campaigning happening while they're coming in to vote it doesn't apply for early voting and absentee voting. And so in your packets, I believe you have a copy of a policy that I'd be recommending that you put in place that would afford voters the same rights that it would if they were going to a polling place, that for an early voting site, they would have that 150-foot buffer.
I didn't realize that we didn't have it for that, so.
It doesn't look like early voting is going anywhere and staying, so I thought it was kind of time to address it and get some samples from other communities. And this is what I think most communities that I've talked to, the clerks have landed on this particular policy.
And this is basically identical to what the existing state law is for election places. This is just us being proactive before state law catches up.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Just kind of coincidentally, I was speaking to somebody from the auditor's office this weekend.
Yep.
And they said that they're working very hard to make sure that the legislature allocates the money to come back to support early voting.
Yep.
And if we have any trouble, for us to notify their office. And the state auditor, Suzanne Bump, lives in Easton.
She
so
sure does, yep.
She's easy to reach, so.
Yep.
Great. All right, so let's go back to the beginning on this. The first one is motion. Craig, do you want to read that? Can you see it in your packet? It's, where is it? Hold on a second.
You're on item F, vote to change a polling location.
It's right
Down
here.
there, move to designate?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to designate the Colleen Corona boardroom located at the town offices, 136 Elm Street, Easton, Mass, as the polling location for the March 31st special state election only, and to revert back to Oliver Ames High School for all subsequent elections.
Second?
So that's Craig and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, the next one is a vote to approve the collector to include municipal information regarding the presidential election and early voting in the October 2020 water bill mailing.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Would somebody like to make a motion to?
So
approve
moved.
that?
So moved.
Second.
Craig and Mark, all in favor? Unanimous. And next is, would somebody like to make a motion to propose that the Select Board Policy Number 92 regarding electioneering during early and absentee voting?
So moved.
Second.
Chuck and Craig, all in favor? Unanimous. Great.
Thank you very much, first of all. If I know you've had a busy night, but if you would allow, I'd like to just do a quick information on the federal census, the 2020 like you had asked.
I just want to make sure I got all those before
Yeah.
I start to lose track.
Yeah, me too.
We were racking up votes there.
I appreciate it. So the federal census is something that happens only every 10 years. I act as the liaison, so I'm not intimate with what is in the survey, and I don't know a lot of stuff. I have some contact information of some people if you have further questions that I don't know the answers to that I'm happy to bring back. But for the public to understand, and you folks as well, it's going to be very different this year. In mid-March, every resident in town should receive an invitation to respond to their census. That's different. It used to be a mailing of a hard copy of the document. They're now going to say, I think it's a postcard that they send, and they're asking you to then either respond via online, right from your smartphones also, or by mail. And you can also call them and answer the questions over the phone with them. Then mid-April, for any non-respondents, the people who have not yet responded since the postcard, would then get the mailing of the actual document. Over the summer, after 5 different mailings, for those who haven't responded, is when that door-to-door campaign happens, where they start knocking on the doors and asking the questions then. So it's really important to get the word out about this difference, just so that when people get these postcards, because it looks so different, they understand this is not the local census that we were talking about, this is the federal census. And, it's really important that they respond. I'm sure you folks would agree. This sets our official population for 10 years. First of all, and then it also is the way that they derive some of the funding for some of our public services, schools, roads, bridges, hospitals, colleges, all of these types of things. Those numbers come from our federal census. Congressional seats, and I'll come back to you 2 years after looking for you to help with re-precincting based on what we find out from the federal census. It's easy, it's safe, it's important. I want to say the safe part again. A lot of people who don't respond are concerned about where their data is going. It's safe. It's not an individual search. I think if you follow the news, there's a lot of questions about whether or not the citizenship question is going to be on that, and nobody else sees that information. So it's really, really safe.
And Danielle, to be clear, the citizenship question is not.
I've heard back and forth, but I don't know.
I'm hearing it's not.
That's my understanding,
Okay.
that it is not. But the census calls for counting of people, right?
Absolutely, it does call for people, but there are questions that make people feel uncomfortable.
For
whether
sure.
it's that
Oh, no,
one
I'm not
or something.
marginalizing
Yeah.
those concerns, but I think
Yeah.
that if we do have any local information online, but we do make sure we point to whatever federal, I would hope the federal census website clarifies.
Yeah, it does. So the next thing I was going to say is where to find kind of this information. So everything I just kind of rambled off, if you go onto the Easton website and you go under residents, there is a drop down now on that says 2020 census, and it directs you directly to the 2020census.gov page, which there's a lot of pages, but this one's a really good page that it's directing you to that kind of goes through the things that I just went through. Lots of links for questions. How do I count for my college kid who's not here but is somewhere else? Because the federal census is asking you to tell us on April 1st what is happening in your house. So those students are supposed to respond in their college, as an example. And all that information is on that webpage. So,
Excellent.
again, thank you for your time.
We appreciate
Your
it.
time is
We
up.
appreciate the update. So it's nice to get this information and to hear from your office. And thank you for the work that you do. You have done a tremendous amount of work in the past year with the elections and with the special election for the school. And your office is very well run. We appreciate your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, next, Southeastern Regional Service Group, SERSIG, contract award for Department of Public Works.
Madam Chair, I can speak to that. So the board may be aware the Southeastern Regional Services Group, also known as SERSIG, is comprised of 23 cities and towns in Bristol, Norfolk, and Plymouth County. And we are a member of that group and benefit from shared procurement costs and cost savings as a result of going to procurement as a large group. You'll see in your packet an award sheet for DPW services. The SERSIG Board of Directors met on January 8th and voted to award the contracts as detailed on that sheet. These award sheets need to be voted by the full board, and then SERSIG will mail the actual contracts to be executed and signed by the chair at a later date.
So we're just voting to,
Sorry, it said full board, though.
So you're going to vote the award sheets as presented tonight as a full board, and then that provides the authorization for Dottie to sign
Meaning,
the actual physical contracts itself.
what
We don't
what
have
he's,
full
what
board
he's saying is
meeting,
Tom's not here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, a quorum of the board, sorry.
Okay.
A quorum of the board,
Okay.
yeah, as opposed to just Dottie signing without your approval, yes. Thank you.
So Craig, you want to make the motion?
Is it something, anything specific I have to say, or just so moved?
I think to move to approve the Southeast Regional Services Group DPW Services Awards for February 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Unanimous.
I'm sorry, motion.
That was
So what we had to
Craig
say was
Dunchak,
so
I'm sorry. I'm slacking. Okay, vote to establish a committee charge for a taxation aid committee.
I can also speak to this, as the board will call this past fall at special town meeting, voted to adopt Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 3D, which established an elderly and disabled taxation relief fund. In your packet is a draft charge for your consideration to establish a taxation aid committee, which will implement and administer the fund that was approved. This charge has been reviewed by town council, and we recommend the board vote to adopt the charge and solicit interested volunteers to be appointed at a later date.
And at that point is when the actual structure will be devised, or is there something you're going to devise and give it to that group? Go ahead.
Well, so the board needs to be appointed first, and then under the state law that was adopted, that board then needs to adopt rules and regulations for the governance of the program, which we'll provide technical support to them.
I was kind of looking more at structure as opposed to the rules, because...
The structure of the board.
Well, no, the structure of the whole process. I could, if you will, my mother lives in Brookline. I paid her real estate bill the other day, and on the bill is a particular section that allows you to designate money for the Taxation Relief Committee, which is the same thing we're talking about here. However, it's a completely different address, and it doesn't allow you to just tear off the thing and mail it in. You have to do it completely separately. So I'm hoping that we can do something that's a little bit more user-friendly, so that if somebody wants to add some money to their tax bill, that some way we can do it on one sheet, and it gets mailed directly, as opposed to having this.
So unfortunately, from our preliminary conversations with the tax collector's office, I do believe that there may have to be separate payments just because of the accounts are very specific what they go into, but we are looking at what other communities have done and trying to make sure that we find the easiest possible way to do it, including making e-payments and things like that available too. So it is absolutely our intent within the law to make it as easy as possible. We don't want to do it in name only. We want people who want to help out to be able to do so. So it's well taken. We are looking to that, and that we are saying the same thing. So that will be incorporated into the rules for the committee to adopt, are not just pertinent to the application process, but also to how we will administer that process.
Yeah, Dennisport, it's you check it off on the paper, but you have to make out a separate check.
But you have to send it to a different address, or the same address?
No, same address, but
Brookline does
different
a
check.
completely different address.
Yeah, I don't see why.
Yeah, I think we envision the same address, but it would be a separate
But
check.
it should be, make it easier.
It's one envelope.
Yeah.
Makes it,
Yeah.
I know it sounds simple, but it
Who
actually
writes
does make a
checks?
big deal.
All right. Excellent. While I was being smart aleck, I lost my page. All right. Next is...
Well, no, I'm
approve
sorry,
it.
Dottie,
Don't we?
we're requesting that the board vote to adopt
I'm sorry.
that committee charge.
All right, would somebody like to
So
make the
moved.
motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Absolutely.
Unanimous. Great.
Excellent idea.
Okay, and next is the opening of the annual town meeting warrant.
Sure. So, although it feels like we just got 2 town meetings behind us, it is time to open the warrant for the annual town meeting for May the 18th, as called for in the charter, at 7 o'clock, the Auburn Ames High School. I'm requesting that the board vote to open the warrant with a closing date of Friday, February 21st, 12:30 p.m. for the submission of warrant articles to my office, as is our practice. After this vote, Lisa will send a memo out to department heads, board and committee chairs, notifying them of this if they wish to submit articles for consideration. And we are currently looking at having a draft probably to start that process in March.
So that's why the 3-week turnaround with the short turnaround?
It's the same as always.
Same as always?
Yes. Yeah, but because town meeting is the same, third Monday in May every year, no one ought to be surprised. But this is an identical timeline to the past few years.
Okay.
So
Okay.
moved.
Second.
Mark and Craig, all in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is general minutes dated November 18th, 2019, and January 6th, 2020.
Move to accept the minutes as printed.
Second?
Craig and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Town administrator notes?
I have none.
Selectmen notes? I'd just say that Mark and I and Connor and David Field from the DPW and Kristen Kennedy from Health and Human and Community Services and Greg Swan from DPW went to the Mass Municipal Conference this weekend. It was great. It was great to have such a good, strong presence from Easton. There's a lot of workshops. There's a trade show where we can meet vendors. And it was really good to interact with people from other communities. Mark, what did you think?
It was an outstanding conference, definitely learned a lot. For the first, it was my first time going. I had no idea all the, just the trade show in itself, and then, the new ideas that come in, and I mean, you sit on a board like this and you kind of think that things have to go a certain way, but you can bring new ideas to the table, you can change things, and you can get ideas from other communities, and it was really interesting. So I was glad I went, and I was thankful to be there.
Great. Excellent. And with that, press notes. Okay, if somebody would like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Craig and Chuck, all in favor? Unanimous. Great, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Wayne.